All right. Hello, everybody. It is Brian, and I am back from Dublin. If you were lucky enough to see the 2 or 3 minute video I posted when I was in Dublin, I didn't do a long one because I was literally at work and trying to not show where I was working. But yeah, welcome back, everybody, and glad you were able to join me today or on the VOD. I appreciate y'all. Before we get started, let me see a bit of housekeeping. Nisha281, thank you for following. Lo-Fi Lounge followed 4 days ago. Thank you so much. Lady P, of course, our patron saint of InfoSec. Resubscribed with Amazon Prime, which, you know, it's the first of the month. So if you have yourself an Amazon Prime account, you know, instead of paying how much ever it is for a subscription, you can give that to us. Give that, and that's money that we get that doesn't come out of your pocket. Hey, Walt. Hey, how you doing, man? Glad you could join me today. I am back from Dublin, so I will tell you, I love Dublin. Dublin was great. There was so much to see. I walked. Well, let me see. Let me see what the final tally was here. So, if my maths is correct, let's see here. Oh, we got some stuff to talk about, but yeah. So. Some interesting things today to talk about. Let me see. All exercises. It's mostly walking, so I liked. Yeah, it was fantabulous. You know, a lot of our meals and stuff were. Let me see, for the, okay, so according to this, I walked 39.7 kilometers from the 23rd through the 29th. So that would be, okay, so Sunday. So I also walked, yeah, 39.71 kilometers. So what is that? What is 39.71 kilometers? Okay, almost a marathon, right? Amazing. But yeah, so got back on, let me see, it was Friday. So flight was delayed out of Dublin for 3 hours. And the interesting thing about Dublin, and one thing, if you ever fly back in there, they have something called pre-clearance when you're coming back to the States. And that is customs. Right? So if you ever travel internationally, when you fly back to the States, usually the first point of entry back in the States, whether it be LA or Houston or Dallas or any of those places that take international flights, you have to go through a somewhat lengthy line at the airport because there's a lot of people coming out of planes. And so I thought I would have to, again, you know, what pre-clearance is great. I mean, I had no idea what that was about, but I thought I would have to hit customs when I got into ORD. And apparently pre-clearance is a unique thing to Dublin and a few other international airports where you're literally going through customs at the airport before you get into the States, which, great idea, right? I mean, 100%, you know, because usually what happens, and in this case is what happened, my flight got delayed back to the States. I thought that I would miss my connection in Chicago because I would have to go through an hour worth of customs, and that didn't happen. The minute we flew into Chicago, it was like, oh yeah, you're flying right, you know, going right into a domestic gate. And I realized that my flight in Dublin had been delayed to the point where I might miss the connecting flight from Chicago to San Diego. So I called them up, called United. I said, hey, I need, you know, right now the plane may or may not leave on time, or it might leave, you know, not leave according to that. Yes, yeah, Walt, somebody else had told me that some Canadian airports have it as well. And so United rebooked me on a flight that was 3 hours later. So I get into Chicago and it's like, oh, my original flight is still here, and I don't have to go through customs. So could I make that flight? And luckily that flight, the 3:40 flight from Chicago to San Diego, was delayed an hour. So I missed out on an aisle seat because I had an aisle seat on that plane, but then I ended up getting booked into a middle seat, but I still managed to get home around 6 or 7 o'clock, which was better than having to wait until 10 or 11. So, hey, fix it. That's fix it right there. That's good people. And hello, Cyber Centurion. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so I loved Dublin. I walked all over Dublin town. Let me see, or not Dublin town. Let me see, let's see. So we were in downtown Dublin. I had to walk in and around this area here. May or may not be LinkedIn, I don't know. But yeah, saw St. Stephen's Green. There's a beautiful bunch of trees there. Lovely fountain in the middle, a lot of water, walking paths. It's a very nice, safe place. There's a good, let me see, where is it? There, I got coffee here at one of these joints. Rolling Donut, good place. Donuts, nah, you know. It was a nice place. I didn't get the donuts though. I didn't see anything that was I did go to, there was a place up here we went to, Temple Bar Pub. We went to a place called the Long Hall. Just walked all over this place. I tended to walk home from the hotel, which was about half an hour away. Went and saw the Molly Malone statue. Yes, that happened. Saw that. So the picture that I took of the Molly Malone statue, not to be weird or anything, but when you see statues like this, old statues that have been around for a while, you see where people tend to touch the statue for good luck or prevent disease or what have you. The picture I have, and I took this, albeit fairly early in the morning. Let me see. Where is it? Okay. Yeah, here it is. So this is the current picture. Oh wait, let me zoom back in here. Okay, so this is the current picture of the Molly Malone statue, and yeah, exactly, Cyber. I mean, you can see some of that on this picture as well on the browser window. I don't get it. Exactly, fix it. I'm like, yeah. I want to say good luck or some weirdos. I don't know. But yeah, it was, everyone, like there was there's a statue that I've seen that, you see where it's been touched so many times on the foot, potentially, that the foot is shiny for whatever reason. Don't get it here. Don't get it here. But yeah, so there was a ton of stuff. Oh, I went to the Haypenny Bridge. Got a picture of that. That was a lovely bridge. We ate at a place called the Winding Stair, which is just maybe people taking photos with it. I don't know. Fix it. It was just a little on the weird side. But yeah, there was a joint here called the Winding Stair, which was a pretty good place. One thing I did find out about, this is it's smaller than it looks. We actually sat right over here. There's another set of tables over here in this place. But the one thing I found out about Dublin and a lot of the places we stayed at, or stayed and ate at, not stayed and ate at, but the places we ate at had like set menus. So it was, you have a group of 15 who come in. They have a app's main dessert, and it's like $55 to $70 a person. This was $70 a person, I believe. They had a really good bourbon bread pudding, and I had the 9-ounce steak here, and I believe I had the. Anyway, so they have a set menu. Yeah, here you go. So you know, they have starters. I think, oh, I had the pork cheeks. I had the pork cheeks. It was good. But they have a set menu for various things if you aren't, you know, if you're in groups. And a lot of the places that we went to in Dublin had set menus. It was like, you know, apps, main, dessert. And I thought that was quite interesting. It's very similar to how we do when we go on cruises or what have you. So, but I loved it. I did go up and see what they called the portal. The portal was right here. I saw that. It was off because when I took the picture, it was at like, what, 6 in the morning or something? So 7 in the morning, and it was asleep at the time. So because it was dark in New York. So, but I've got a ton of pictures of the canals, streets. You know, it was just a beautiful walking city, and obviously it was very much darker there. So yeah, exactly, Walt. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was right next to a donut place that we went to. I went to, it was called the Hot Donut. Excellent donuts, by the way. I know everybody's like, I came for security and you're talking to me about fucking donuts. I'm like, that's fine. Yeah, so these donuts are interesting. So well, the ones I saw, like these, they didn't have holes in them. They were very much like a cream filled donut for you Americans there. But the filling wasn't in the whole donut. It was like a little circle in the middle of it. So I got like a milk chocolate donut, and I got a coffee. So a lot of my receipts for travel read like this. Let me see. Coffee and pain au chocolat. Grande latte extra shot. Yeah, here's another coffee. This is Java Republic, Ireland. You know, so I've got a ton of receipts, and most of it's coffee or Uber trips. That's it, because everything else was pretty much paid for by, you know, my leadership. So they're the ones who have to deal with the complex, you know, credit card issues. But I've never actually been on a trip before where I think I bought maybe 2 meals, the one in the airports, and that was it. But the majority of my receipts, which are plentiful because I was jet lagged like a mofo, are, you know, yeah, coffee. So it was fun though. I remember walking along the water in St. Patrick's Day, green ever. Yeah, I mean, it was just amazing. Yeah, so get out and travel if you can. There are definitely conferences there that you can go to. There was actually a security conference that was happening in Dublin, I think, coming up, and I know B-Sides Dublin is there, so I would go to B-Sides Dublin in a heartbeat if I had a reason to go, like, you know, talk or something. But yeah, there you go. It's yeah, May 18th or May 24th, 2024. So yeah, it already happened, but beautiful city. Go if you can. Got to see some Gaelic football on TV because I was jet lagging pretty hard. It's interesting. So it combines soccer and football, and yeah, soccer and yeah. See, you got a goal down here. There's 3 points that costs 3 points by kicking that score, and then they like grab the. It's like a volleyball, and then yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, there you go. But so you can kick a point like a field goal, like in the NFL, and it's a point. But if you kick it in a goal, yeah, and then they do that. And so I'm not sure this person is taking the piss or whatever, but I got to see the semifinals of this, and yeah, they have a volleyball kind of thing, and they can kick it, and that's 3 points, or they can kick it into the uprights for a point. And never seen that before, so it was just an interesting experience. The other reason I enjoy traveling is to see the sport, you know, cricket and what have you. So anyway, yeah, easily in my top 3 favorite cities in the EU. So, or in Europe. I haven't been to London yet, but I heard different things about London on our last on-site that it was like super crowded and everything. The day before we left, I left on Friday. There were people coming in for a Taylor Swift concert and Shania Twain's concert, and of course Pride was going on, which was great to see. There were so many flags and so much support going on in the city, and so yeah, I was sad to not be able to. There were people camped out along the Trinity College area for Tay-Tay's concert and Shania Twain, and they just had the night before we came in to Dublin, Rammstein had been there, so I was like, oh, people just really must like Rammstein, and they were like, no, there was a concert last night. I was like, oh, okay. So that was it was very cool. It was very metropolitan. I could have taken the train if I wanted to, because it was easy. You just get on, you tap to pay, and you're on the train. But I wanted to enjoy the sights. So if anybody has any other questions, I may post some pictures up in our Discord if you want to see them. I don't take pictures like normal people, so I'm not in 99% of them. So I take weird photos of all kinds of stuff that I just find interesting. Like there was an atomic orange, which you'll have to see that one if you do, but I'll post them up. So if y'all want to see them. So if you're under a rock, which I was for a good week. I mean, it was mostly work all day, getting to watch some talks from people in my organization just completely owning up left, right, and center our infrastructure. We had some very senior engineer folks at our meetup and are on site, and the folks that can get stuff done, right? Microsoft calls them like fellowships, like the most senior engineers, they call them fellows or principal type engineers. And so, our folks, our talent that is just kicking ass and doing things. They had a CTF, one of the engineers, the senior engineers, had set us a goal and basically said, hey, there's a draft in my email. I want you to get it for me. And having only the inside knowledge or having access inside the network, our folks were able to grab the flag out of his inbox legitimately. And so we got to watch 3 of the most senior engineers at our organization facepalm repeatedly for about 3 days of talks based on different operations that we were doing. And it was very gratifying to see these folks taking pride in their jobs and doing these write-ups and really showing impact and places where we as an organization can improve. And our most senior engineers looking at this stuff going, could you send me the ticket you're working on for that? Yeah, we need to fix that immediately. And so it was, not only did it help us sell what we were doing as a team, which was amazing, we also managed to get things done because we would, they would go, hey, what's the team doing about that? And it'd be like, oh, it's taking them 6 months to get this thing done because of X, Y, and Z. And they're like, yeah, send me that ticket. And it was like, by the end of the day, oh yeah, we've done X, or we've fixed Y, or yeah, that's done. I think we fixed at least 2 major issues that had been open because a team was having some issues or whatever. But what we found is these folks, we can cultivate this relationship and help them understand what we do and build that goodwill. Create the goodwill that if we need to go to them, we know that we can. They're a force multiplier, right? If we say something, it's our team saying it, and we may be right, but we don't have the, I don't want to say power or authority, because it kind of is, but it's like they're going to listen to us, but they have their own agenda. And it's like, hey, we got to get things fixed, and we've got to get product out, or we got to get features out, or we got to do this thing for the business, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Having senior engineers, like the fellows from Microsoft type, senior folks, most senior non-manager types, they can get more done, or, but you have to use them in the right way. You don't want to just go to them for everything. It's kind of like, we can escalate to them, and now that they know us, and I mean know us, because we've had dinner with them, we've had ice cream with them, we've enjoyed pints of Guinness with them, we've talked to them as humans, that kind of thing. It's a different mindset now. When I was first going, to Dublin, I didn't know. I knew 2 of these 4 folks that were there. 2 of them I'd only seen when it was usually really negative meetings. And my response to having them attend was, what do they do? It seems like all they do is they come in and complain, and then nothing gets done. And after talking with them, I kind of understand it now. And I actually got a one-on-one set up with one of them to talk about being a better PM kind of thing, because he manages the role of the PM at our organization. So, we got to sit down and have a 20-minute discussion about PM, topics and things like that, even though he's an engineer / a vice president type person. So it was interesting. I understand them now. I think a little better. We had a panel and an Ask Me Anything and a reverse Ask Me Anything to, talk about their experiences coming from, because they came from rank and file too. They came from like my level, and now they're like, well, there you go, up here. And so, I mean, they've gone through the ranks. They've been at this organization. I think the 4 of them were there for a combined about 50 years of experience. So, some of them have been there for a while, and it's just interesting to see the humanization of people. So sometimes, and it's very hard, I know not every company can do this, but if you have the opportunity to maybe interact with people that are, I don't want to say nemesis or you're adversarial with, maybe it's because they have reasons for doing so. I don't know. But after talking with 2 of them, the only time I've ever interacted with them was in a meeting that is very stressful and is very like, every time I would see them in the comments, oh, great, Jim's going to be in this fucking meeting again. Okay, great. This is just, why can we just, maybe we could schedule something else for him to not be there. And after you sit with Jim and talk with him, you kind of get a sense of who he is. So it was just nice to be able to make that happen. So I guess in some of y'all's cases, if you are dealing with something like that, I don't want to say go to their offices or, maybe schedule some one-on-one time with them. If you can do that, get to know them maybe as a person, how, you can have a 30-minute one-on-one with somebody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about work or something like that. Maybe you could just ask them about their job. Maybe the adversarial nature is one way. I mean, Jim didn't know me. He only saw me on the MBR, and but so yeah, having that discussion, clear that air, if you will. Maybe it'll help you out with this, because I definitely am going to go into our meetings next month with Jim and David, and say, okay, I'm willing to understand now, more willing to understand. So anyway, got a lot out of it, as I do most on-sites when I have a lot of crushingly bad anxiety about going to these things, and then I come back and it's like I felt like I went to a security conference, right? I'm just shot out of a cannon. I've got ideas about doing things, and I'm wanting to get on here and I'm wanting to do all this. But unfortunately, it's going to be a weird week for everybody, because us U.S. Americans are celebrating our Rebel holiday on Thursday, July 4th. So yeah, that's yeah. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about the on-site and things that I've learned. I'm still processing all the insights that I had during that time. I just wish that, we had faster transportation, because I would have loved to have not have spent a whole day traveling back to the States to make that happen. So Yeah, so regression is a bug in SSH, and it affects Linux systems and potentially Windows systems, mostly systems that run OpenSSH. And there is of course, Qualys unveiled a report on 2024-6387, which is a continuance. I think this is the bug. So regression, interesting, okay. This is the best you could come up with for an icon? Come on, man. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. It's, so it sounds bad, admittedly, an unauthenticated RCE on OpenSSH. Now just simmer down. Don't stress too much. There is some caveats. There are some, it's not like send a packet completely owned, okay? So, they discovered unauthenticated remote code execution in OpenSSH server, SSHD, which is ubiquitous in many systems that run Linux or Windows or Mac in this case. Anything glibc based, right? And they say Linux systems, so there may be controls for Windows. Actually, the Windows version may not be vulnerable because depending on when your OpenSSH was built, because it's really weird, and we'll talk about it as we go through. Versions earlier than a certain version are patched, and then there was a gap, and then this was reintroduced in another way in like version 8 point something. So there's somebody took something out right here to actually cause it to be an issue again. So there's a gap of like anything between 4.4 and below, you're vulnerable, but anything above 8.8 and you're vulnerable. So it could be that you have an old version of OpenSSH like 5.3 P1 or something like that, and you're not vulnerable because there's a window where the fix is in, and then something happens and some developer decided, oh, this doesn't make any sense, I'm going to remove this, or I'm going to change this thing, which actually reintroduces the bug. So yeah, so it references its nature as a regression bug affecting OpenSSH. And I would imagine, and to Walt, I mean, if Walt's my OpenBSD is safe because their signals processing is safe. Yeah, if you're using OpenBSD, admittedly less than 1% of humanity might be using OpenBSD in a production environment, and never mind as your daily driver. You're not vulnerable because you're probably running the latest version anyway, because you're building from current every day anyway. So yeah, they say affected versions. So 4.4 P1 is vulnerable unless they patched up for 2006 5051 and 2008 4109. So that's how old you have to be and then from versions 4.4 P1 up to 8.5 are not vulnerable because there was a patch for those. So if you have like I said 5.3 P1, you're safe. You're safe from this bug in particular. There's still a ton of other shit that those older versions could still be vulnerable to, but you're not vulnerable to this one. And then of course, because of the regression bug that somebody introduced after 8.5 P1, hey Sabotage 2, and up to 9.8 P1 because they accidentally removed a critical component in a function, then you're vulnerable again. Now, that's a big bunch of shit for what does that mean? Okay, so they said that there was let's see, where is it? Yeah, it's more note of the exploits for the vulnerability appear only to be viable for a certain kind of Linux server, most of which are relegated to 15-year-old systems. And so there are tools that you can use that can help find out if you're vulnerable. Lightweight and efficient scanner designed to identify servers running vulnerable versions of OpenSSH, which I'll put in our chat windows here. Boink. There we go. Oh. Yeah, there we go. All right. And yeah, so there's a ton of feedback about it, which is kind of cool. So what it amounts to is it's somebody's going to attempt to log into your externally exposed SSH server. Now, that's the other thing. Your SSH has to be as a certain version, whether it be before 4.4p1 or after 8.5p1, and it has to be exposed to the internet so that somebody can, bang on it remotely. Internally, of course, you're going to have different controls in place. I mean, if they get through your firewall, if they get through your load balancer, if they get through your VPN to your externally exposed SSH instance, they can do this. According to this person, it will take roughly 1.4 days of roughly 10,000 attempts to make this happen. So on a 32-bit system, that is, and again, that's the other thing, it has to be a 32-bit OS for this to be its most vulnerable. It's not to say that you can't do it on a 64-bit system, it's just there's that much more that you have to do to make it, and more time to make it work on a 64-bit system. So it's going to take longer to do so. And so, no, that's not it. BlazeBits, thank you for cheering. I appreciate you. Thank you, BlazeBits, for yeah, Blaze. We were running into this week because, as every holiday in the US seems to be rife with just before vulnerabilities to Cisco, F5, Blue Coat, Fortinet, SolarWinds. Remember when SolarWinds came out? I think that was on 4th of July as well, and that was during the pandemic. So I think I want to say it's like 2020, 2021, sometime in that time frame. I remember going out to Ocean Shores in Washington State and hearing about this thing called SolarWinds on my really, really bad internet connection. And so, yeah, you're going to have a holiday. There's going to be some bad shit happening. And so we were talking about it at work. And we're like, how should we spend time fixing this? And I was like, well, some of our good friends on Slack had mentioned this vulnerability, but there is a fix that you can add to your SSH server, which is, there it is, copy. So somebody had mentioned it, I think. How am I going to do this? Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll do that. Yes. File, new window. There we go. So, you are a bastard. Come on, VS Code. All right, there we go. All right. So these are a stopgap or mitigate. Just dying inside here. There we go. This is a mitigation that you can add to your SSHD config file to reduce the severity, right? If you add login grace time and max startups, so you set your login grace time to 0, you set your max startups to, and these are the examples they gave. This may not work for your team, especially if your SSH server is being constantly used by the system or by multiple users. Your mileage may vary. These numbers will probably need to be modified depending on how often your system is being used. But so SSHD max logins. Max startups, there we go. All right, so Stack Overflow to rescue. So the numbers, the 3 numbers that were given, which are here, 30, 70, and 97. So this is the number of authenticated connections before we start dropping. So in this case, 30, 70, and 97. So you have All right, so 30, 70, and 97. So 30 is the number of unauthenticated connections before we start dropping. 70, in this case, would be percentage chance of dropping once we reach 10, so increases linearly for more than 10. And then the 97 is the maximum number of connections at which we stop dropping everything. So that's why I said your mileage may vary. If you have a server that needs 500 connections that are valid, you might want to modify these accordingly, and not every server will be the same. You can add these, oh, and login grace time, You would think, login grace time, there we go. So login grace time is not set less than or equal to 1 minute. So the protocol allows you to connect to a remote server securely using a variety of clients. Login time parameter specifies the time allowed for a successful connection to the SSH server. The longer the grace period is, the more open, unauthenticated connections can exist. And that's where regression kind of happens. It's the unauthenticated connections taking up issue with your server, causing all kinds of nefarious shite in this case. Sabotage, hello. I would hope anyone exposing a specific version of SSH to the internet wouldn't be leaving it exposed long-term for a lot of other reasons. You're 100%. You're 100%. Blaze, to your point, it's always a Wednesday, always a holiday. Yes. Unfortunately, the 4th of July being on a Thursday means that we've got 2 chances for fuckery this time, because everybody's going to cut out on Wednesday, which is exactly when you're going to end up with your your awful stuff. And then the poor saps who've got to come in the next day on the 5th, when everyone else has decided to go take holiday, which means you've got less people on site when shit hits the fan. You've got that Friday as well. So I think this is going to be terrible bad if somebody is sitting on something and doing so. Back to this thing, follow the steps below to resolve misconfiguration. You can set this to 60. Double the fuckery, yes, exactly. But yeah, so fixing this will limit the login grace period to 1 minute. You can actually set it to 0, and what that does is it disables the login grace time parameter altogether, which disable login grace time. You would think that that's not good. But it says, note that setting login grace time mitigates remote code execution risks, but makes the SSH more susceptible to denial of service attacks. So again, I'm not saying that you should do this. This is something you should definitely think about before you implement. But as a stopgap measure, let's say you can't easily patch the system. You can go in. Why am I clicking on that? So you can go in, set your login grace time to 0. That will reduce the RCE chances, but make you more susceptible to denial of service attacks. And then your max startups, you can massage these however you see. The 97, I think, being more probable in case, at scale, you're running SSH for 300-400 people. So you may want to set that to 300 or 400 people. You may want to set the unauthenticated connections down to say, 15 or something like that. And then, obviously making these changes is going to require you to restart your SSHD server. So anybody who's connected right then, maybe you're doing file transfers, maybe you're doing something operationally significant on that box, they're going to get a bump, like maybe a 5-second bump. It may disconnect them depending on the type of connection it is. It may do nothing at all. They may just have a little hiccup and then they'll reconnect right after if it's a persistent connection kind of thing. So again, before but it will reduce the chances of this vulnerability. Let's say you're the IT guy, your IT guys are, trying to figure out what to do. All the security people are, cautiously having a beer at the bar, on a happy holiday weekend. This would be a stopgap. The other thing I would suggest, if you have something exposed to the internet like this, fail to ban. Fail to ban is always a good choice. This would be a great time to maybe start thinking about hardening your SSH servers. If you've got this kind of vulnerability that you're going to have to patch for anyway, you could say, well, I could just pop me some fail to ban in there. Make make it so that, you know, multiple logins and authentication errors can't occur. There's also deny hosts, which is another one. Let me copy. There's failed ban, and then I think deny hosts is still one as well. Yeah, automated SSH blocking. That's another good one. I'm sure there's other ones that people can think of. If they know them, please pop them in the chat here. But those are great additional controls that could be put in place. You could also say, hey, you know, we're only going to connect to, you know, we're only going to allow certain people based on IP address, or you know, if they have a, yeah, failed to ban's a good one. Deny hosts is another one that I've used from time to time. It does, deny hosts looks a little long in the teeth, 2015. The good thing about both of them is I believe they will ban temporarily, or you can ban permanently. So if you see somebody who's, you know, if your SSH logs show, hey, you know, somebody from the same IP address is going through your word list or going through a user list of you know, Dan and Bob and John and Barbara and Timmy and whatever, after 5 or 7 chances of that from that IP address, that IP is blocked for, could be 5 minutes, and then if they do it again, you can permaban them. You know, this is a good time to start thinking about hardening the system, especially with this kind of bug, where if you've got to add these kinds of things. You know, I'm surprised that, you know, they haven't mentioned things like fail to ban or deny hosts in the systems here. But yeah, it'd be good to add those things if you can. Not everybody needs SSH too, so you might want to take a look at your audit talk to your audit folks after this week and go, hey, how many people have SSH access? Do they still need it? Have we offboarded, you know, the guy who was here for a couple of weeks that you know, shouldn't have been there? So taking a look at your users and doing that. So yeah, yeah. According to this story, 14 million internet-facing instances are vulnerable to the bug. Though it appears the blast radius is smaller than the entirety of the ecosystem using OpenSSH, 100%. 14 million is probably a drop in the bucket to the billions of servers potentially using SSH. Yeah, it affects default configuration and doesn't require user interaction. So if you've changed or added any of those commands, you know, any kind of, you know, unauthenticated, you know, limiter or something, because the whole thing is, you know, the race condition is you know, let me see. I wish there was a more technical, I don't know, what is this baseball? Come on now. That's not what I'm looking for. No. Let me see. glibc base, yeah, 14 million, yeah. Successful demonstration on 32-bit Linux GPS with address space, randomization, layout, whatever. Under lab conditions, the attack requires an average of 6 to 8 hours of continuous connections up to the maximum the server will accept. See, that's the big thing. If you've got somebody pounding on your SSH server for 6 to 8 hours and you're not doing anything about it, or you don't have some kind of control to automatically add that IP address to deny hosts or something like that, you need to look into that. I mean, even on a good day, you shouldn't have somebody constantly pinging and exhausting resources on your server to be able to connect access to that. Specifically, Qualys found that if a client does not authenticate within 120 seconds, the setting defined by login grace time, then the SIG alarm handler is called asynchronously in a manner that is not asynchronous signal safe. So there's the, yeah, signal safety there. That's what I was looking for. Function that can be safely called from within a signal handler. Many functions are not async safe. In particular, non-reentrant functions are generally unsafe to call from a signal handler. So yeah, when performing buffered I/O on a file, yes. Unsafe functions, 2 possible choices. Ensure the signal handler, yeah. So, you know, patch your shit if you can, which would be great. But there's tons of mitigations you can put into place to strengthen and harden your SSH, including simple configuration fixes that can be done. Sounds like it looks like right now there's nothing for login grace time and there's nothing for max startup. So adding those you might actually see a performance boost on your servers. If you don't have max startups set, then add those things, and that will help mitigate some of this issue. Especially, I would imagine max startups more than login grace time. But yeah, so here's a number of functions required to be async safe by POSIX 1. So you've got abort, accept, access, chown, chmod, chdir, clock get time, close, connect, create, dupe. So there's a ton of things that have to be asynchronous safe. If a signal handler interrupts the execution of an unsafe function and the handler terminates via a call to long jump or sig long jump and the program subsequently calls an unsafe function, then the behavior of the program is undefined. Yeah, fetching and setting. Okay. So yeah, there's a reason that they should have probably fixed that, and they did. I was actually reading I was reading something today where they showed where it was actually removed and made 8.5 vulnerable again, but it's neither here nor there. I'm sure if you went to OpenWall or something and looked at it, they would show you the exact stuff where that is. Let me see, OpenWall. Mailing list archives. OSS security. July, RC. Okay, so Okay, so this regression was introduced in October of 2020 by commit 752250C, revised log infrastructure for OpenSSH, which accidentally removed an if-def do log safe in SIG-hand from SIG-die. Okay, a function that is directly called by SSHD's SIG alarm handler. In other words, it's not vulnerable because do log safe in SIG-hand was added to SIG-die. So that's why this version up to 8.5 and after 4.4 P1 are safe, right? So somebody removed this because they didn't exactly know why that was in there, potentially. And this vulnerability is exploitable remotely on glib-based systems. I don't know if there's any other type of libc-based systems. I guess if you're not using glibc, then you're also safe, maybe? So there's the OpenWall post for that. Oh, that's what I saw. So I Came Tough. I don't know if you know him, but he's on, or LCAM Tough. Is it LCAM? ICAM. I've always called it I Came Tough, but yeah, it is what it is. Had a discussion about delivering signals for fun and profit article in the old school method that I was going to read through and understand. It's not a long read, but it does have some code in here talking about a sample vulnerable program, which you can look through if you enjoy looking through C code. It's not a new article. Looks like it was written in 2001-ish. So Michael Zalewski. So there you go. But that's as good a write-up as I think you're ever going to find on OpenWall for this this vulnerability. So if your leadership is like, where did this all come from? OpenWall has some really good technical discussion about that if you really want to get super technical with them. But I think what your management's going to say is, what do we do to fix this? So it's either, patch and or add these things to the SSH config and or, add deny hosts and or fail to ban to your system to ensure that, these things are happening. Also, like I said, it's a good time to take an audit, see what you've got running on your box, who's running on that box, do they still need to be running on that box, and kill some connections or kill some process to make it less useful. Again, I know fail to ban and deny hosts. There was a security post for FreeBSD with fixes. It may be vulnerable. It likely requires a different attack as it doesn't use glibc. There you go. Yeah, I think FreeBSD, last time I checked, and that's probably been over a decade, doesn't fully adhere to OpenBSD's SSH implementation. So. Speaking of the devil, release from OpenSSH in a nutshell. Yes, there was a FreeBSD security update today, and it was on these forums as well. You'll forgive me for sounding like a nag. It's a good thing to subscribe to FreeBSD security, low volume list. They give security updates when one is discovered. In this case, they give ways to patch the problem either with update or with source patch. So here's the forum post. Okay, so due to the fact this advisory is being released the day after 13.2 release is going out of support, the security teams decided to include 13.2 release in response for this issue. So, yeah, the signal, yeah. So if you're using FreeBSD, there might also be some additional insights in here as well, if you want to take a look at those. As a result, calling functions that are not async safe in the privileged SSHD context, a race condition exists that a determined attacker may be able to exploit to allow unauthenticated remote code execution as root. I guess the other thing that I'm thinking is if you, hey, Digital Warhead, hello. Yeah, so if SSHD cannot be updated, the signal handler race condition can be mitigated by setting login grace time to 0 in etc SSHD config and restarting SSHD. This makes SSHD vulnerable to denial of service, exhaustion of all max startup connections, but makes it safe from remote code execute, which is why a lot of people were saying add the max startup stuff to kind of limit the amount of stuff. So, so yeah, FreeBSD is vulnerable because they're using probably the Linux version of the portable OpenSSH, which is why they call it, you know, SSH. It uses OpenSSH, but uses the portable version, right? I just said portable, so Walt got me on that, exactly correct. So the signal handling is different than OpenBSD. So yeah, they kind of use the Linux version that has been exported as well. So anything that would affect Linux would also affect FreeBSD. I don't know about NetBSD. Again, if 1% of the Earth is using OpenBSD at maximum, 0.01 is using NetBSD. So that's my opinion. But anyway, so that's the the FreeBSD version there. So yeah, there's a lot of good information in OpenWall and those. I would suggest advertising to those on at least on your workbox, maybe as because this is some good threat intel. It's good technical discussion, because if you're one as a security person, if you're going to talk to your developers about these things, or you've got a developer manager, or you're like, why do we need to patch this? A lot of good discussion happening in the system. Plus, they tend to bring up a lot of the different CVE, you know, the CVEs that come up for things like, well, in this case, Apache web server. Yeah, and you know, it does take a little getting used to. Weird. They released OpenSSH version 9.8. Regarding the race condition fixed in 9.8, a mitigation to prevent exploitation of this bug is to disable the login grace timer setting log equal. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so now you can, this is the exact diff of where the code you know, got messed up. So OpenBSD developers are not perfect. Obviously, at some point this got removed in OpenBSD, OpenSSH, and so you can see exactly where the code was or where it should have been, and got taken out and put back in. So Damian Miller, okay. Cough. Got some meatloaf going on there. Wife's making meatloaf tonight. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. So I'm not a developer. So the first thing I thought of was, why would a developer remove that? What makes them want to do that? Was it, and you know, obviously to this point here, what would make them want to remove if-def syslog rsafe, or in this case log, syslog, where is it? Let me get the original link back up here. So, they removed the ifdef bit in the code. And is this the right one? Yeah. What made them want to remove this? Was this bad documentation? Did somebody not understand what this was needed for? I can imagine that there's a lot of code out there, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to clean this up, and we don't need this if-def and whatever. And it's like, maybe it's the equivalent of jiggling the handle on the toilet. There's a certain way that you do things, or maybe this was the esoteric fix for something that shouldn't be removed, but because maybe it wasn't documented. Hey, put this in because of X, and obviously they tell you don't want to be too loquacious about your comments. You've seen it in web apps. It's like, oh yeah, we need to have this in the web page, because if we don't, then it allows for cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Great, I can remove this, and then now I've got some cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. Or in this case, if there was a comment where it's like, hey, this causes a race condition, or this was something that was janky, but we're going to fix it later, that would show bad guys, hey, this code has a vulnerability. And if maybe they didn't want to point at it, but I just was trying to figure out why they would remove that, or maybe it was a miss from the people who didn't review the code in the first place of why that was removed. I don't know the minds of the developers who did this, but I imagine in other orgs, you see regressions all the time where it's like, oh, we took this out and it actually caused a problem. Well, okay, that was because we took this piece out because it used to do whatever, and now we still need it. So I just find it interesting that as more complex the code gets, the more chances for mistakes can come in, or in regression testings, those will pop up. I'd imagine if you have a QA group that is looking at these things and running any kind of unit tests, or there's some kind of testing being done, that so they said, if there's QA testing to make sure that these vulnerabilities were still being tested for, maybe they were taken out after the patch because they thought, oh, well, we don't have to worry. There's already code in here to fix these, so we don't have to test for these things anymore. And this is from 2006 and 2008. So yeah, things I think I'm thinking about is like, what made them want to remove that? What was the impetus for doing so? And then it's like, oh, maybe I just was up too late and decided to delete this file or delete this line. I don't know what it did, but it's probably fine. It it built on my machine, so everything should be okay. So yeah. Enough of that. Go patch your shit, or add those lines that I mentioned about 20 minutes ago in the stream, if you want to mitigate your system for now until you can get some patching in. Some good news if you're a bounty person. If Google's now paying $250,000 for 0-day vulnerabilities for KVMs, kernel-based virtual machines. Basically, a hypervisor, if you break out of their hypervisor, or you find a bug in their hypervisor, you get a sweet $250,000, which then maybe you would want to have that shipped to your Cayman bank account. Companies have also stopped using SDET or QA in favor of dev testing and automation. So Walt, the testing and the automation part, how are they doing testing and are they automating the testing, or would that have popped up in a I don't know, a black duck scan or some kind of SCA scan, something like that, where you're doing software what am I thinking of, a SAS or a DAS tool, like a active code scan. I mean, that probably wouldn't have shown up in a scan, right? Because was there anything inherently wrong there? I mean, that would be something that would have to have been found in the actual, yeah, depends is more than adequate answer here. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I doubt would have shown up in most. Yeah, I mean, it feels like this is one of those things where you would had to have tested the actual application, and it would have, like, you wouldn't have been running these tests over a long period of time, so maybe you wouldn't have even discovered it. So it is an interesting little bug, especially if it's in such a niche environment, 32-bit. I mean, I imagine you could do the same thing in 64-bit. It's just going to take an inordinately larger amount of time to make this happen. So if you're still out there running a 32-bit Linux system, what's wrong with you? Maybe you're doing it for performance reasons, or maybe it's an IoT-based system. I don't know. What? Well, you can get up here if you like. There you go. What? Meow. Do you smell it too? Mama's making meatloaf. Wow. Wow. Yes, everybody missed you. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, Google's got some sweet moolah they're willing to give out. So, go check out the KVM CTF rules. Wow, you can't run. You don't do CTFs. You can't run CTF. No, you can't. So yeah, KVM CTF is part of the Google VRP and focused on eliminating VM reachable kernel-based vulnerability. So it's host to guest, right? So and I'm without water. Oh well. So yeah, you can get some fat loot based on full VM escape, arbitrary memory writes, arbitrary memory reads, relative memory writes, denial of service, relative memory reads. So probably more than a few meetings to talk about order of preference there. So it says, if successful, the attacker will attain a flag that proves their accomplishment in exploiting the vulnerability. Severity of the attack will determine the reward amount and will be based on the reward tier system explained below. But yeah, so if you want to attempt to go for a cool $250,000, go check this out. And sure, so that's some good stuff. I mean, obviously you feel comfortable. It feels like they wouldn't have raised it if it had been either they're trying to get people to want to poke at it, or they are confident in the technology because they've already gotten enough bugs from it that it's like, okay, people don't want to try this anymore, so we need to make it more lucrative. I'll take my bounty in Bitcoin, please. You know what? You still get taxed for Bitcoin. So really your only options is maybe to open up some kind of bank account in the Caymans or someplace like that where you can tax dodge the hell out of it. Or maybe you just say, pay me in houses or something like that. Or a Google stock. If they give me $250,000 in Google stock, I'd be okay with that. I would be more than okay with that because I don't know how much you get taxed for the $250,000 that you would get, but my guess is that if you put it into stock and kept it for a long time, you'd only get 20%, right? So that would be good if you could get 20 million, you know, quarter million in Google stock. Let me see. So yeah, 186.61 right now. So you get, you know, seriously. Yeah, they'll have to send you 1099. Yeah, I'm assuming they would. So yeah, you're screwed anyway. So you can't, you know, put it in some offsite, you know, bank account, or, you know, dodge that in taxes. Maybe if you incorporate it as a company before you did that, because that's some life-changing money. I won't lie. I mean, that's, well, pre-tax, that would be almost a year's worth of money for me, but post-tax would be about 3 years. So yeah, and then you have to, yeah, that I know, Walt, but that's why I said, you know, you're gonna have to figure out a tax dodge or something for that. You know, get an accountant to say, you know, send it to, you know, Joe Bob Billy's Bug Bounty Service LLC or something like that. But yeah, anyway, yeah, go check that out if you want to, you know, hook up and go poke at KVM. Make sure that you do it right, and you'll get, you know, not only will you get $250,000 if you could get a full VM escape, you'll also probably be able to, you know, get a talk at Black Hat. So yeah, so to obtain this flag, your exploit should read the contents of root RCE flag file in the host's file system. There you go. Tax tips. Was a guy Phil Kramer, whatever his name is. Oh, I'm the guy with the question marks on it, right? Question marks on his suit. Matt something, question mark guy. Yeah, him. Oh, Matthew Lesko. There you go. There you go. He had, yeah, he's like a whacked out Bill Nye or something like that. But anyway, yeah, so OpenSSH vulnerability, yeah, security researchers, GitHub deny hosts, yeah. So the other one that I found out was the US is banning Kaspersky software, which is nuts. This happened on June 28th, so I was out of the country when it happened. I hadn't had a chance to see it. So if your company uses Kaspersky products, apparently what I gather is starting on July 20th, the company will only be allowed to provide software updates through September 29th. So if you're working towards new budget next year, you might want to add a line item that says new endpoint or antivirus provider if you're using Kaspersky, because there's no guarantee that they'll come back after this. And September 29th, should be almost, that's the start of Q1 for a lot of folks. I think Google and Microsoft start like July 1st or something like that, or July 31st. Long time ago, Kaspersky user for personal use, going to have to find something else now. Any thoughts on Bitdefender? I don't know. I don't use Bitdefender. I actually don't use any endpoint security software on my computer other than Microsoft Defender. So, yeah, I'm assuming there's a lot of people out there who've bought computers at like Best Buy or something that has bought into Kaspersky or freaking Norton or something like that. Yeah, I don't have any experience with Bitdefender. Of course, I worked at CrowdStrike at one time. I'm not, suggesting them because, they, personal use, they don't have it available. I don't know. I've seen I've seen Clam AV be a thing, but yeah. I don't know. So they said they conducted an extremely thorough, that's their quotes, fingers, not mine, of Kaspersky and explored every option to mitigate its risks, but officials settled on a full ban given the Russian government's continued offensive cyber capabilities and capacity to influence Kaspersky's operations. Yeah, I mean, I use Windows Defender because I don't have antivirus. I haven't had antivirus for, what, a decade or so. I think the last time I had anything. Yep, was going to mention SEC now too. Okay. Yeah, I mean, depends on how hostile your environment is. If you're using it, Security Now, Security Now podcast, huh? Say, is that the folks who make Bitdefender or whatever? I've never actually listened to Security Now. I think I've mentioned it more than once. When I was first starting to listen to podcasts, the first one I listened to was Paul Security Weekly, or at the time it was Paul.com Security Weekly. And they bagged the shit out of Security Now. And to the point where it was like, okay. So, yeah. I'm sure they're great, but I hear that they like to hawk that, their data recovery tool quite a bit. So, yeah, Steve Gibson, yeah. I'm sure they're great. I can't listen to them. So I don't know why. It's some kind of mental block that I have. So they said, so it's interesting. So whoever this Raymondo, let me see, what is his name? Here you go. Commerce Secretary Gina, whoever she is in this case, my apologies. You've done nothing wrong. However, you have done nothing wrong and are not subject to any penalties. However, I would encourage you in as strong a terms as possible to immediately stop using that software and switch to an alternative in order to protect yourself, your data, and your family. Interesting. Interesting. So, yeah, that's it's almost like the Huawei stuff, except they were a bit more emphatic. It's like, yeah, we're not going to sell that anywhere else in the United States anymore. So, yeah. So they said CISA will contact critical infrastructure organizations. They use Kaspersky to brief them on the alleged national security risks and help them identify alternatives. So, if you're big enough that CISA is going to reach out to you, they'll find you some nice alternate options. And, if you haven't started replacing Kaspersky now, you probably should, because it's not just, where you can just flip a switch and replace your antivirus software along with all the telemetry and logs and things that you're getting and detections, and, all your SOC analysts are, used to certain things or certain ingestions or what have you. It's I would say, as I've been fond of saying, it's a non-zero level of effort to replace an antivirus in 3 months' time, or 2 months' time. So, well, it is his one commercial product. Good podcast, especially if you're not a hardcore InfoSec person. Well, you know what? That's a good point, Walt. That is a good point. Maybe I should go check that out. Maybe they cracked the code on that. So, one second. All right. So yeah, it sucks, but I mean, it's not like he hasn't. This is Eugene Kaspersky here on the screen. They've been. I was listening to Risky Business podcast in 2015, 2016, and there was discussion even as far back then as how deep are the fingers of the Russian government in Kaspersky. And this guy, Eugene Kaspersky, has said, no, they're not involved with us at all. You would have thought maybe he would have had the sense to go, okay, I see where this is heading. We need to GTFO out of Russia and maybe rehome in Botswana. Any place else except Russia and China. But he didn't do it. So now he's suffering the consequences of that, because once the US does it, other countries will probably wade in and do the exact same thing if they haven't already. He knew it was coming. So, I mean, he couldn't have been ignorant to the fact that, hey, it's whether or not it's true, it's the perception, right? Something about lying down with dogs, you get up with fleas, that kind of thing. So if he had had enough sense to move to Panama or, Poland or something like that. Even, I mean, we're seeing a lot of that, with TikTok. It was like, hey, you're owned by a Chinese company, okay? Zoom was the same way. Hey, can you move your shit out of China or what have you? So I don't have a lot of pity for Kaspersky. He's nice and rich. He's an oligarch. So what I hear is that Eugene is good, but his people are not trusted by the USA. Well, he's only one person. He's not making the products. So move all your shit out of Russia like you should have done a decade ago. And then you wouldn't have had this problem. There wouldn't have been this discussion. They wouldn't have had to have banned Kaspersky software. The influence footprint would have been far lessened or mitigated completely. So again, don't have a good Russian that did not want to leave home. Well, you're suffering the consequences now. You can sell all the Kaspersky software to Russia and countries that don't listen to the Five Eyes and do what you need to do. So, let me see. I don't think I have anything else. Anybody have any wins last week while I was gone or this week? My stress level's down a little bit because I didn't have to worry about the international travel and the on-site. Any wins? Did anybody accomplish anything? Did they pass any tests or anything like that? See if there was anything else we wanted to talk about on here that was... There's so many data breaches. So many data breaches. Bloom Health Centers. There's Croatia's largest hospital has ransomware. I mean, there's just so many data breaches and ransomwares right now. I thought I saw somebody saying TeamViewer hacked again. What are they on, like their second or third hack now? There's nothing left for them to get. They got all the good stuff. Almost every Apple device vulnerable to CocoaPod supply chain attack. Well, that's a new one. I didn't see that one. CocoaPods, an open source dependency manager used by 3 million applications coded in Swift and Objective-C, left thousands of packages exposed and ready for takeover for a decade. How so? Claims CocoaPods in 2014 migrated all pods, a file describing a project's dependencies, to a new trunk server on GitHub. That migration saw authorship of all pods reset and authors asked to reclaim their work. Some didn't, and 1,870 pods remain unclaimed by owners, leaving them orphaned and accessible. Great. This mess is now known as 2024-38368, which EVA's told us has a score of 9.3. Problem earned that rating because all orphaned pods were affiliated with a default email address, and a public API for claiming unclaimed pods was available until late. Oh, wow. No need to provide any verification of ownership. So you could make an API call, hey, I own this one. Done. All they had to do was transmit a curl request, and voila, they would have free reign to modify a pod and insert malicious code. Jesus. EVA's researchers wrote they haven't seen evidence of this mess having been exploited. Given the billion-plus iOS devices in use and the fact that apps from Meta, Apple, Microsoft, TikTok, Amazon, and others have been found to use vulnerable pods, it is absolutely conceivable that thousands to millions of apps have been exposed to exploitation by the vulnerability. We're even aware of this fustercluck is a bit surreptitious too. The researchers discovering them when performing a red team exercise for a client, though not intentional examination of CocoaPods. The EVA team could find them, someone else could have too. Great. Oh good, there's a remote code exec on the trunk server thanks to a mail exchange verification Ruby package. When it rains, it pours, y'all. Give me a second here. I got to post up in our SL Slack. I'm going to put this in the news of the day. Somebody might be using that. Apple Objective-C pods thing. So Here's where the zero-click comes in, because email scanning services check links to compare them to known phishing templates. The researchers observed that automated tools end up following the link and transmitting session tokens over targeted users' behalf. Oh. That is special. That is. Good Lord. That is horrendous. That is horrendous. Worst case scenario is an attacker could have used this technique to get access to our trunk database. They're wiping all session keys, ensuring no one other than those with access to the emails can post updates to those pods. Yeah, except, you know, it's been open for, how long did they say? Late 2023? Well, when did the migration start? Did I read that right? Let me see. Millions of apps. Okay. Good God. I mean, oh, and there's a third in their own source code. Interesting exploitation chain relying on standard functionality of email scanning. Oh, okay, so that was that. Okay. Exploiting the fact the aforementioned package execute host commands against the provided email address without proper validation. A trailing bash command can be injected. Oh my God. There's just so much wrong here. And yet people will still use CocoaPods, given all of this hot garbage right here. Good Lord. Worst case scenario, how could it get any worse? I mean, they could have been owned up left, right, and center. Somebody could have gone in and RMRF'd them and, you know, impacted thousands of people. And then the polyfill thing, yeah, Walt, I think your point you mentioned about polyfill. I have not even read into all the polyfill stuff, so I can't even speak to that one. Yeah, Log4Shell, XZ, SolarWinds. Everyone using CocoaPods review dependencies for orphaned pods, perform checksum validations on all code downloaded from the trunk server, review all third-party code, update their CocoaPods installations, and generally be more attentive to open source supply. Okay. This is not even a recommendation. So this is a please, sir, please. Estimated 97% of all commercial code bases believed to be utilizing open source components. The advice pretty much applies to everyone. Good times, good times. Jesus, that's CocoaPods just became like crazy stupid immediately. So that's nuts. I'm really hungry and I smell meatloaf, so I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna suggest that I'll be back on Friday because it's gonna be kind of a holiday, and I don't know how many of you will be here. I don't expect you to be here because, you know, it's after the 4th of July. If you're not in the United States, have a good Friday. I have an idea I may actually do something else not related to security, so we'll see what happens. But just wanted to tell everybody I'm back. I'm doing good. Hope you missed me. And really enjoyed Europe. I was meatloaf time, exactly. I was actually on genealogy websites trying to find out if I could find a grandparent or a great-grandparent that I could map to England or Ireland or the Dutch or something so that I could get a passport. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Anyway, I actually stream, Twitch. Is anybody online right now? Let me see if anybody's online right now. Relaxed Beats, Sid Heresy, Shadow Tech, Chill Hop Radio. We could go raid Sid, I think. That would probably work. I'm gonna raid him and then we will go and get some meatloaf. Yeah, Fix It. Thanks for the stream. Thanks to Cyber Centurion. Thank you to Walt. Thanks to Digital Warhead. Thanks to all the folks who showed up here. Thanks for the bits from Blaze. And yeah, y'all have a good rest of your day and rest of your week. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.